Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening. This one is special because this interview came from directly as a result of Save Our Sites networking, which Ram, one of your employees, Gurav, did a very good job. We did a shorter podcast there on location in Oklahoma. And Tilda, all I'm hearing is AI. The whole theme of it really was the whole conference was like AI was very powerful part, but everyone thinks it's very early as well, and nobody's comfortable letting go, so to speak. But it's happening, whether they're comfortable or not, which is another kind of topic. But Gurav was like, yeah, you have to interview our founder, Ram. So here we are. Ram Yalamanchili. He, this is an interesting story, and he's got an engineering background. He had like at least one sort of a tech company that he sold, and then he got into biotech as a CTO, Chief Technical Officer, right? Chief Technology Officer. That one sold. We're gonna get into the story, but after that, something must have been planted in his brain to start Tilda, because shortly after the biotech, he founded Tilda, which is where he's currently at. And he actually bought a site network to test Tilda, and Ram himself became a coordinator. And guys, if nothing else, you can stop listening after this if you don't want to anymore, although I recommend you listen. My thesis back in 2019, maybe even earlier, was sites are the Trojan horse for technology. There's all these tech companies now that want to do all kinds of things. The sponsors are not going to listen unless a site says, you know what? I had a good experience. I actually worked. And Ram is living proof. He bought a site network to prove this. So we got to get into all of that. This is a very accomplished guest. Ram, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Pleasure here.
Before we get into your career and all that, what was the feedback Gurav and them gave you about honest feedback, brutal feedback about Save Our Sites conference?
I think interestingly, Garo's been he's got a lot of experience on the CRO side, as you probably know.
Hmm.
Had several senior positions for quite some time. And this is probably one of the first conferences where he said he really learned the pain points from a site's perspective. It's a very representative crowd, and of course,
Yeah.
you and the team behind the conference did an amazing job in putting together the program. But he basically was like, there's so many pain points.
But does
It's
Gurav
really
not
interesting.
know you were a coordinator? He could have just asked you.
I think it's one thing when we sort of start in our own bubble, in our own tin can, right? And it's another thing when you sort of see a community forming and sort of bringing that voice to it. So
Yeah.
and it's it's very pure form, right? You're talking primarily sites, you're talking coordinators. It's a very representative crowd versus maybe some of the other conferences where we've been to, and it's a mix of people and such. So I think in that way, again, felt really connected with the motivations, the opportunity, and why we're doing it. So I think that
Well,
was great. Coming
Thank
out
you
of
guys
it.
for coming. We'd love to get you guys next year. Announced it yesterday. San Diego. Everybody was curious where it's going to be. San Diego, you're welcome, guys. Everyone wanted the beach after being in Arizona the first year and Oklahoma the second year. So we got the beach for you guys now too, okay? Your story is super interesting, man. Gaurav told me about it, then I looked at your LinkedIn and I was like, this is exactly, the kind of person that should build a tech company in our space. Maybe take us back to the early days. You went to Stanford, right? Undergrad, from what I
Grad school.
grad school. Take us back to that time, maybe. Maybe that's early enough. And your first thing out of Stanford grad school was a tech company, which, pretty stereotypical for Stanford grads. But after that, what got you into life sciences?
Yeah, interesting. Segue there, right? So I've had engineering background. Primarily I would say that's sort of where I closely relate to my interest and my skill sets. Starting off, I would say out of college, joined a company which wasn't the founder, but was one of the early employees there. And I think we did some revolutionary work out there. We were one of the first companies building what today is the cloud infrastructure, cloud computing infrastructure. So we sort of like I would say, built the scaffold, built all the technology which enabled all this next generation of revolution to happen, right? So, came out of it with a lot of learning. I mean, I think the company went from just maybe less than 100 people when I joined to 15 something thousand people by the time I was leaving. So I saw the whole expansion phase of the company, the growth phase of the company. And I think it was a very, very rewarding experience from just learning and being in the right place, working with the right type of team. After that, founded another company in the mobile security space. So always kind of stayed close to like very technical, highly like systems oriented sort of companies. Had an exit of that company as well. And I think after that, I was just really curious about what to do in a way where, being more thoughtful and methodical about where I would want to spend my career on the rest of it. So I think health was very interesting. I'm sure you've seen this, and maybe many of your audience might have seen it. I do find healthcare to be interesting because a lot of folks who I've met in the healthcare entrepreneurship either have a very deep science background, they come from the space, they understand the background, there's like some domain expertise there, or they have a personal axe to grind. They've seen something in their life somewhere and they say, you know what, this is worth solving because I want to make a difference here, right? I'd probably say I'm on the second part of it, the latter part of that. And I was really struck because I didn't know where to start because it's very hard to break into life sciences, as I'm sure you know. And I'm not somebody who has that kind of a background. I have a technology background, and finding the right place to go find an entrepreneurial journey. I was looking to build a company again after my second exit. I think that was the interesting part. So I spent a little bit of time at a venture firm in the Bay Area, and start to kind of understand what the life science market looks like. And I met a team of physicians actually out of UCSD, San Diego. Um, and I learned that there's a whole space called molecular diagnostics, and it's a great space because it's genomics. So you are working with data. Genomics equals pretty much large data, large amounts of data,
Yeah.
and that means you could start applying your traditional machine learning and AI techniques and sort of bring value to the problem, right? So
Yeah.
that's what really struck with me because I was like, great, like I know that space. I'm well versed in building technology slash data management or data analytical
If I
companies.
could double click on that. So I'm very interested in philosophy lately, for the last 3 years maybe. Genomics becomes data, data is genomics. Do you think, the more you look into this, just a quick opinion, do you think we're in a simulation? Because the way you said that, it just reminded me of this. I'm like, existentially, like, I just don't, I'm trying to figure out, I know recursion, and I'm actually reading this really cool book, Gödel Urscher Bach. I don't know if you read that one. I
I've heard
mean,
of it. I have not. Yeah.
okay, I'll send it to you because I'm recommending this book to everyone. What is your thoughts on that? Your opinion matters more than most, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you asked this question right now. I just saw an interview with Jeffrey Hinton, sort of, one of the big figures in AI. I think recently won the Nobel Prize. And he was basically saying, what is LLMs teaching us? Like this whole revolution around large language models and AI, and I'm sure things like OpenAI's ChatGPT and many other models which are coming out right now. And he made a quote something like, we're not as rational as we think we are, maybe. We're probably more like stochastical, like we're probably, a probability machine in our brain, and we sort of do things more on intuition rather than like logical thinking, even though it appears logical, right? It
But
appears that we
that
are
I think that's what it means to be human, though, to step
exactly.
outside the system and not be efficient.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, are we in a simulation? It's an interesting thought. Probably not. I'd like to believe we're not. We have some agency,
Yeah,
but
I think we're not
yeah.
also, but it's interesting to think about. But I do think that humans and AI, like this convergence that they've been saying is going to happen, which we're still waiting for. I think it does, but I don't think AI, take over like everyone says, because the inefficiency is actually the beauty in what we do. Like it's the meaning, right? There's the efficiency and how, all the data, but then there's the meaning. And without the meaning, I don't think anything actually is valuable. So anyway, just wanted to segue into that.
Yeah, yeah,
So back to the
absolutely.
biotech. So you had the axe to grind.
Hmm.
How do you just found a biotech though? Like how, I mean,
Yeah, so I think it's a merger of essentially your skill set, right? I would say myself by myself did not have the skill set to do anything in the biotech space at that point, but also ran into a team of physician scientists who said, "Hey, we have this early science, early paper with a handful of patients. It shows promise that we can, if you do this kind of a genomic based assay, a blood draw based test, it can detect a certain type of staging in cancer." So, essentially, that was a very interesting problem. Generally to stage cancer, you're going after, PET scans or, some kind of a imaging modality. But they were like talking about using cell-free DNA in your blood to basically create an assay out of it and find a signal, right? And
did
that's
you
interesting because
did you randomly find these people or was it serendipitous or were you actively seeking like somebody like this?
I would say it's a mix of all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was also at a venture firm where you just get to see a lot of the deal flow. So I was at one of the major
Ah.
venture firms out here called Lightspeed, one of the top tier funds out here, and I was working there. So I get to see and meet very interesting people on a daily basis.
Whoa, hold
So
on. Okay. For many people, that's a career by itself. So you've had so many, you just jump around. But the venture firm, how do you get into that if you're technology? Was it just a function of being a founder that had an exit and now the VCs want you as an advisor? Or is that
yeah, that's exactly what it is. They also were one of my investors in my previous company, which we
gotcha,
just
gotcha,
exited at that time.
gotcha.
So it was one of those things where,
So that's
hey,
how it
I'm
works.
I'm in the market. Yeah,
If you're a successful founder, you're a scarce resource because there's many more unsuccessful founders that are venture backed than there are successful ones. So it's essentially like a filter, right? Like you make it out, you have an exit, even a reasonably small one, but a good, everyone got money back. You're now could be considered like an advisor to others.
yeah, and you go through valuable learning experience, right? Whether you're successful or not, I think is the material. Once you go through an entrepreneurial journey, you learn a lot. There's scars on your back,
Sure.
and it's probably helpful for any entrepreneur to sort of understand and if you can give back. Um, but to answer your question, there was a mix of all of that. I had the opportunity to meet quite a bit of founding teams at Lightspeed who were working in the healthcare space, got to see the pulse of like where things might be going because you see so much of the early stage companies being formed and people are giving ideas around what's happening. So there's just a lot of valuable learning I had at that time. I would say that was more interesting from a perspective of just kind of due diligencing the idea itself. To know whether this is a good path to go down or not, and is there an actual market? Is it viable? Is there enough, the rest of the ingredients to make it a successful company? And then, of course, I also met several teams, and this team really struck out because they were wonderful people. My co-founders at that time, um, they had a very strong inclination in science. They come from excellent backgrounds, so it was just really a great fit. I saw value on my side, what I can bring primarily from the data and the AI side of things, and from their perspective, it was more of the sciences. So
Gotcha.
so we had a great partnership and ended up raising quite a bit of capital into that company. And we ran essentially it was a product build company. So we started from very early science, building up the product. Had to run a large clinical trial for this. So we ran a global study. We had many sites in this, and ultimately enrolled some 600 patients. So it's a fairly large
Wow.
trial for a
Wow.
biotech at that time. And
Lexent Bio, which was acquired by Roche.
that's right, yeah. So I think the takeaway for me was more or less that the clinical trial industry has enormous amounts of um, you know room to grow into and be more efficient in every way possible. That's kind of my learning spending 4 years at Lexent. Right. Of
Yeah.
course, we could have kept going, but I think ultimately for us, the best path at that time was to exit the company. Roche was a partner. They offered us a buyout offer. We took it, and they're great at commercialization. They're great at certain things which we probably might not be the best fit for, but we felt we were good at development, and
Was
development is running
Roche
trials. And
was Roche on after the phase 3 data? What gave you the offer or
that's right.
before?
Yeah.
Oh,
So see,
okay.
this is a diagnostic. So so yeah, once we had a readout, we had some early partnership discussions to become a companion diagnostic for some of their trials,
Ah,
and then
okay.
ultimately that became an offer to essentially just buy that. So
Gotcha,
I think the
gotcha.
learning is very simple, right, Dan? I mean, this is something you talk about, and you have a whole conference behind it. Uh, but I saw it from a biotech founder's perspective because we were essentially the receiving end of all the data which is getting generated, all the hard work which is being put in from the site's perspective. And I very clearly remember going down to sites, talking to investigators, talking to coordinators, and thinking, wow, this is an entirely different world. This is not the world which you get painted when you're working from a biotech's perspective. You're sitting there, you're listening to your project managers, your CROs, whoever it might be, and there's a very different picture. I mean, why are things the way they are? There's a certain explanation to it, and may not always align with what the site is actually telling you. And
Yeah.
I really felt like this is a very interesting problem, and once we had an opportunity to exit, I took some time off. It was right into that COVID period, I would say. So,
Perfect timing.
and yeah, and started thinking about, this is an interesting problem. There seems to be something happening in the AI space, from just my own like sort of reading the tea leaves, right? I was very certain that we're probably going to have some kind of a breakthrough on the AI front, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. Uh, and some of the early seminal work was coming out, like the transformer paper was out. So just started to like find some sort of a thesis around what is the next big area which we could really like find meaning, right? At least for me, that was the main thing. It was not to try to just build a business. It was really more about I want to spend the time in my career in a meaningful venture somewhere I can make an impact. And what is that place? And I thought clinical trials was very exciting and interesting, primarily because at Lexent, I realized how much effort it was to run a trial to get to the place we went to, and how much money we spent, right? And how much the whole thing, like every possible option I could think of was really like a lot of burden.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, this is interesting. I feel like I understand from the sponsor side of things. And of course, I got to know all the systems, all the processes to try
All the
putting up a
grunt
trial,
work, the
all the grunt
IRB,
work. Exactly.
continuing review, which we're doing today, my coordinators. But I was gonna ask you, when was the first, so at Lexent Biotech, when you must have set foot in an academic site before, I'm guessing Stanford maybe, but what was your first experience with like a private community-based clinic and like the struggles that they
Yeah.
go
I
through?
mean, right away, I would say, I mean, I'm sure you know this, right? You do have academic sites, but your KOL sites, but they don't tend to be the highest recruiting sites.
No.
So you have to have a really good strategy around your community, for sure. I think
Even
that's
more
important
so
from a
now with
biotech.
the NIH cuts and all that. I mean, that's even
Yeah,
more so. It's going to trickle down to the private sites now to make up that slack.
yeah, exactly. And I think the big difference between a community and the academic sites is just the amount of resources they have.
Mm.
It just comes down to that. And there's pros and cons to it. There's wonderful sites in the community who are motivated, who do great work. They're easy to work with, communicate. They also have challenges, right? They might have staff attrition. They might be burdened by many things going on. There might be many things going on in their life, which ultimately affects the entire set of programs which they're managing. So I really got to know several of those community sites while we were at Lexent, primarily because we were very closely monitoring where we were in terms of data generation, things like that. So I would say got to learn quite a bit about that process. And yeah, ultimately I said, the perspectives matter. If you're building a product, you have to be in the weeds of it. I think that's something I truly believe in.
Yeah.
So I have a biotech perspective for 4 years, which is not by any means a large amount of time, but it feels like 40 years when you're running a startup, I feel. It's like everything's spanned by,
But it's so unusual to see, like, from a biotech executive, and much less the founder. Matter of fact, it's more likely to come from a founder, but the biotech, like, or even the pharma, the corporate level people, they don't generally get in the weeds with the sites, right? They don't, it's a different world. They hire people to take care of those problems. They're waiting for efficiency. They're not necessarily going to try to understand the problem directly. They just kind of indirectly talk around the problems. And this is my observations. And then the ones that actually care enough to go visit or come to save our sites or just come to listen, they walk away thinking, how do we get anything done? Because we're
Mhm.
putting billions into this space, and it literally, if you want to distill to first principles where your money's going, like it's a house of cards that rests on the shoulders of a study coordinator somewhere. That's literally where the innovation, like the bottleneck, it's
Yeah.
not the PI. The PI's got tons of stuff going on, especially at these community clinics, like mine, all of them. They, okay, they even need reminders what studies what, but the coordinator, they're the one, they're like Atlas holding up everything. And they're the lowest
Hmm.
paid, bottom of the barrel, bottom of the totem pole. So, from my experience with talking to people like you, and you actually went and did the groundwork in the trenches, we're going to get into that now. The executives that visit, they kind of wish they never did because now they have to go tell people how it really is and they're afraid. So they just make up a story like, oh, yeah, it's just diverse community. I think they switched to diversity at that point because it's an
Right, right.
easier conversation. Is this
Yeah.
accurate or am I just making something up?
See, it's a very complex problem, right? So there's no easy solution to this. And I would say I would just leave it as I think people have great motivations. Everyone's trying to do their best, but it's a very complex problem, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so we have to first of all recognize that it's a very, very challenging problem in terms of what's happening in this industry right now and
yeah,
has always
yeah,
happened. And there's so many stakeholders. There's different ways of attributing value to the problem you're trying to solve. And there's different budgets and different buckets, this. So, but the conclusion, I think you very nicely summarized, right? The conclusion of me going through all of this is that, you know what, the real problem is actually helping the coordinator. That's what you really
yeah,
need to focus on, right? Everything
yeah,
else is just talk. Like you're not going to get the type of massive gains which you are all hoping for by simply saying, I'm going to put this patch or that patch, right? On the solutions. It's like if you could somehow magically make every coordinator everywhere in every place on the planet a 10x individual, like 10 times more productive, their life is balanced, they have they're not going home with like the rest of the night to be worked on something and then in the morning feeling like they're not appreciated. That there's so many things like structurally which are not balanced in this industry. um, and I think the other thing I would say is my perspective has always been, if you're going to solve this problem, do it for the right reason, do it with a passion which makes sense, and you'll learn something in this whole
yeah,
process, right?
yeah,
So I think I would say my motivations are very different. I came into this space thinking, hey, there's a very interesting problem here. I don't fully understand it entirely. I understand part of it because we were at the biotech side, so I don't want proclaim that I know exactly what's happening and what the problems are. But until you get into the weeds of it, then you realize, oh my goodness, this is a very, very, very difficult problem. There's
yeah.
many facets to this in terms of how you go about
You
solving
say,
it
"Oh
and how
my
you build
God, this is a house of cards." Like, but what you're
yeah.
building, what you just described about we need to 10x the coordinator's efficiency, like that's literally Tilda, which we're evolving towards that in my eyes, from what I know about it. So, talk me through when you became a coordinator, and how long did that last? And so you formed Tilda. Is this correct? You formed Tilda first, and then you thought, or you came to the realization, I need to prove this at a site. Is that literally what it happened or a different way?
Actually, I would say my first thought was I want to learn more about the side business. It's really
Okay.
just that.
Okay.
I did want to build something. It wasn't clear what it was just yet when we found it. But what I did know is I did want to solve this problem in some form or fashion. And in order to do that, I just need to learn first. So, what's the best opportunity which I can find myself in to be able to learn, right?
So what'd you
And
think?
right. So we ended up acquiring a site. They're a network, but they had a physical presence in a couple of locations. And Yeah, and then I'm sure your audience knows this. Then starts the fun, right? So it's a lot of
Yeah.
work,
So
a lot
you
of
acquired a
firefighting.
site. That part's interesting. There's obviously strategy behind how you operate. And I guess maybe because you had funding, right? That you bought was it easier to prove was it did you want to buy specifically like a site network or a site that was already scaled more or less? Or why not just partner with a local physician that just started research? Like what was the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, I think if I could add value on day one, and if I knew exactly how to run a site, I would have probably thought differently. But you have
Hmm.
to realize, like this was, in 2020, I was a novice, right? I'm coming in from a biotech background, and of course, worked with sites, visited sites, sort of, done that part of it. But I can't possibly say I have the experience like you or many of your audience would have to kind of come in and add value. The other thing is, I think when you want to build product, my philosophy is you sort of have to get your hands dirty. You have to know what exactly is how is your impact going to be felt at the ground level, and there's a nuance to it. It's not as simple as doing an interview with your customer. At least
Hmm.
early stage, I think that's not how it works. This is my personal philosophy. Again, there's many forms and ways of building product and entrepreneurship, but so I have just thought, the better approach is go into a site which is a going business. It's got its own challenges, it's got its own ups and downs, and you want to have an unfiltered view into what's happening. Every single thing which is going right and wrong without a filter, right? Because if you own a site, you're going to see everything. You have to see everything, hopefully, if you're running it right. And I think that's kind of where we landed. We just understood. And the other perspective was that, if you're already in a network which is doing multiple trials, you get to see different perspectives from different trials, different partners, different CROs. So you have this added what do you call multiplier effect in terms of your learning, right? So this is all very valuable, and I think if you have some capital and if you're able to do this, that's kind of my thinking.
What did
Spend a couple of
the
years learning.
what did the existing coordinators think? Like, oh, this tech guy just bought our site. What? Did you have to
uh,
talk to them about, hey, I know this is unconventional, but did you have to like win them over a little or how?
I think that was the way to do it. Yeah, you kind of have to be a partner rather than sort of saying, I'm going to be passive. You got to be honest about it, right? We are here to learn and to try new things, and you have to be okay with it.
Were they
Now,
using
that
tech already, or was this like a new thing for them to have to figure out, like slowly
I would
adopt?
say not necessarily, but it was also early days back then. I think
Mm,
there's
yeah.
not as much proliferation as there is today. I mean, I know it's only 4 or 5 years after, but things have also changed in the industry, which is
Like, were
really
they
good.
using
So
eSource or were they on paper?
they were on paper largely, just transitioning, I think, into looking at a few e-source vendors, and ultimately we picked a couple and sort of tried a bunch of them. So that's kind of
Okay.
how we went about it. So it was very like early in that sense, right?
Yeah.
But what I would say is, I did that deal because first of all, I really aligned with the team, and I thought we both could add value to both of our where we're going, and very quickly, you start to see, sites are tremendously difficult businesses to run. There's a lot of variability in the sites business. There's staffing concerns. There's delays in site startup, or studies go studies just stop for whatever reason. So there's a lot of variability. It's a very challenging business to run right, and I think if I were to like really like collate all the notes which I've taken over the first couple of years, easily be filling up a couple of volumes, right? It's a lot of work, a lot of nuanced things. I have a lot of respect for uh, you know folks who run sites, I think, and are actually managing sites because I think, like I said, it's a perspective most people don't fully grasp, especially if you're not in the side business.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the more challenging businesses, and I've told many people since then that, hey, forget about everything I've done in the past. This is probably the most complicated kind of a business we're going after right now.
Really?
It absolutely is.
To
I,
me,
I,
that
I totally believe.
assays and all that is sounds
No,
complex as hell.
you would think so, but it's not. I think sites, the number of variables which can be going right or wrong at any given time is massive. It's a very, very difficult
And the
proposition to
variables are
run
very
this.
human. Like they're all human variables too, which
That's right.
it
Yeah.
to me, I don't know anything else because it's my first business I ever got into, and then I haven't left really. I've done ancillary stuff, but to me, what
Hmm.
was unique the first year I got thrown into this was you actually have like three customers. You have the patients, the physician, and the sponsors. Whereas if I owned like a laundromat, right,
Yeah.
it's just the community. But here I have the community, but I have the sponsors, and then I have the physicians. It's like three different, everyone's competing for, and then if you please one, it inevitably displeases another, more or less. So it's kind of like never win also.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that probably translates to how the site staff feel as well, right? It doesn't feel like there's a lot of win in many cases. It's
Yeah.
it's a grind, and you sort of and as you said, the value attribution is somewhat imbalanced. Who's taking the value from all this great work which is coming out of their work?
Yeah.
As I said, it's a uniquely difficult problem, I would say, to kind of understand this and work through it. And I have a lot of appreciation because of this, because I saw this firsthand, and where we are and what we're building. And um, it's a tough problem. It's a very, very challenging
But
problem.
you know what's interesting about what you guys do, from what I understand about Tilda so far, is that you know how the sponsors, I think they're all starting to realize, well, all the bottleneck really boils down to the coordinator. And if we could make their life more efficient, all these other stakeholders they have to deal with kind of will benefit, especially us, the sponsor. And it's kind of slowly, that used to be the role of the CRO, right? Hey, we'll manage, this is complex. We have expertise. We know how to take care of you, the site, the patient. But now the technology is slowly replacing, eating away at the CRO, core function, really. And I think sponsors for the first time in a long time are able to have more control over their projects with these tools. Not just Tilda, but with all of them, and eSource
Yeah.
was maybe one of the first that paved the way. And as you start getting some consolidation in that space, there's only a few vendors. It becomes
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
And now the sponsors are like, well, maybe we don't need a full service CRO. Maybe just, RFP functional service provider. And then that leads into maybe this site network can handle some of this hero stuff too. So it's very interesting to see where this goes because tech is kind of accelerating it all in that
Mhm.
direction. To me, it's obvious, unless I'm very wrong about this theory, but this is where I see things going.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And I have many analogies in terms of what I can probably quote you on for the exact same evolution, right? Any place where I would say a meaningful amount of tech innovation has happened generally has expanded the amount of opportunity in that space. You know what I mean? Like if you say cloud computing, right? When we expanded the opportunity of how cloud computing can impact number of startups created. From early 2000s to now, we have 100x the number of companies being started. So I think one of the side effects of what we are building and where we want to see what we'd like to see is, I think the number of sites and the number of biotechs should meaningfully expand. That's what I'd like to see.
That's where I was
And
going with. I'm
yeah,
excited now. Wow.
yeah. I mean, I think that's going to happen for sure. I think the data which we're seeing right now with what we're doing, I think it's very clear to me that we are entering a phase of, I would say, I think, and the way I think you started off the kind of the podcast with what does AI do, and I truly believe this is like one of those inventions which will lead to a land of abundance. There's going to be so much we can do with what we already have, or for the resources we might be able to pull in. And it's going to be a very different world because you are if your productivity goes up 10x, there's a whole land of opportunity in terms of what you can do with that type of
Yeah,
productivity,
yeah.
right? So
I
I
think
I
you
am
speak
definitely not in
to
that camp of AI essentially, disrupting us in from a what do I do kind of thing. I think we're just going to have so much more to do, and we're going to we're already seeing this. We have a few uh, case studies for sure where they were planning for a unit of work, and all of a sudden they're using us and they're like, well, no, I'm going to do 5x this, right? And the plans have changed, the strategy has changed, and that's
hmm.
exciting to see. It's early days, but that's kind of where we're planning to take this.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the majority of people watching are not entrepreneurial minded. Like, even if they own a business, they are still paranoid, right? And I think you and I are different. I think we're in the minority of people that try to see the opportunity. And I think entrepreneurs kind of get punched in the face so much that they're forced to just think this way. But so you're saying that what you believe is the abundance, and other industries have shown that that is what will happen. Because I want you to speak more because people are afraid of this stuff. Like on LinkedIn, all you see is, oh, I'm losing my job. I lost my job, outsourcing now, and now it's AI. But you're saying the opposite. Well, this should be an increase in opportunities here.
See, I think it's like the stock market, right? Short term versus medium term to long term. Whatever what your thesis and what your investment thesis depends on what your time frame is.
Yep.
But I think I also want to say biotech has been going through a tremendously challenging phase for the past couple of years, just
Oof.
from a funding perspective, right?
Decade.
It's
The
yeah,
worst performing index in history in the last 10 years.
that's right. And I think that's going to change meaningfully. I think we're adding certain type of tool sets into what innovation in biotech would look like. And there is a possibility that XBI is going to be the best performing index for the next 10 years.
That's the
I can
contrarian
see that
view.
happening. Yeah, I
Warren
can see
Buffett
that
would
happening.
say, buy when there's blood in the streets.
Yeah. And let's think about it. Think of why, right? Why is that the case? Because yes, there is some disruption right now, which we're seeing, but I am also seeing case studies where we are working with sponsors and they had a limited set of budgets which they would have to make use of to get to a certain milestone in their product development. And we're telling them and we're showing them how they could do that at a much more efficient way, at a much more higher certainty, at a de-risked way. Because what was previously very like manual is now managed through an AI process, AI-based process. And the net effect of that was not, for at least what I've seen in this particular instance, is not that they're like, great, I'm now happy that I can run my program well, and it's great, right? Actually, it's the opposite. Now they're saying, you know what, I have figured out how I can run more than what I've signed up for. I'm going to go out to the investor community and I'm going to tell them the story, and I'm going to raise more capital because I'm the most efficient potentially of set of platforms out there who can you know, take more shots on the goal. And on a de-risked basis, I end up being a better opportunity to invest in than somebody who's not actually doing this,
Right.
right? So the way this transformed is, at least one of our customers just raised a second round of capital in a market which is tremendously difficult right now, and they're one of the few companies which were able to pull this off and now have more pipeline than they've planned for just a
Was
year
this
ago.
a biotech you're talking?
A biotech, yeah, yeah. And I believe their CEO was actually on your podcast at some point, Jog McGrath, well, yeah, at some point, right? So
Okay.
it's a very different world which we are now starting to see form. And what is the net effect? Like net effect is now they have more capital than they would have had. They have more opportunities on programs they would have come up with. And I'm not saying it'll happen right away, but we are seeing that already with a handful of early stage companies which are seeing the value and are like on the frontier of like adopting AI and sort of working with companies like ourselves.
Hmm.
And as time progresses, it might take I don't know how long it'll take, I would have to guess, but the next couple of years, I would say you're going to start to see that stratification where you have AI-enabled companies and you have companies which just are not on that mindset. And it's going to happen at biotechs. It's going to happen at sites. We have many sites we work with. We see the clear demarcation. A site with an AI-enabled workflow is far more capable, I would say. And frankly, it'll be like sort of more competitive. You don't sort of start it, right? Like that's just the way it works. You have these great technologies that are coming in. You can fight it, or you can sort of wait out for it. With both, I would say fighting it is not probably like my recommendation. You can definitely wait on it just to see where everyone else is going. And some of them are very excited because they're like, "Hey, I'm building a business. I think I can do much better than the next guy down the road." And my secret power is that I'm just better at using technology. And I'm sure you've already done this with several technologies you've adopted, and that hopefully helps your business. And now that comes down to, okay, like, can I adopt technology not just for the sake of adopting technology, but somebody like ourselves coming into what we do. We are an AI teammates company. So the idea is that, you can basically bring us on. We have a full stack system, like a software system, which enables you to run your clinical trial. We have a system both for sponsors and sites. But talking about the site level, an integrated ISF, eSource, all the usual mix you would probably think of. But the key difference is that we've baked an AI native interface into all these components. So, as an example, let's say you're doing study startup, right? What do you do today? You get a package, then you're opening up this package, going through each of these documents, filling them up, pre-filling them, then maybe getting signatures done, then filing it somewhere. On our platform, you just upload the platform, the documents, and if we have access to the email, we also just can read through the email, and the platform just takes care of it. It can read through the documentation. We already know about your site. We already know
So
about your
we'll
team.
fill out all the stuff, send it to the
Pre-fill,
email.
sign it out.
Will
Yep,
it
send it
work with
out.
my eSource or I have to switch to Tilda eSource?
We have our own e-source right now, so we don't integrate just yet. But yeah, looking for opportunities to do that as well.
I see.
Um, but yeah, I mean
I
that's
think that'll be the
just one
big
function.
part. I think you got like 50-50 because the half of the sites more or less have a eSource.
Yeah.
And then the other half, I think that makes more sense to go after the ones that haven't picked one yet.
See, again, we're early, right? And
Yeah.
we're coming at it from multiple angles, both sponsors and sites. I would say there are several value props which we offer right now if you're willing to take up new technology. One is, like I said, your regulatory management basically comes down to almost nothing. Anything related to regulatory you can manage through our AI teammates, right? Um, Data entry. So if you're entering data into source, right now, every single site out there does double data entry. If you're using, this, right? You enter into your source either on paper or e-source, and then you're doing a double data entry to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
EDCs. There are 20 other EDCs out there.
Yeah.
We've built an AI teammate which basically does that for you. So you enter at one time, one place in our source, and we have figured out the methodology to move this data into different versions of EDCs, out there. And that, in the sites we're at, they love it because it's cutting down 50% of the time,
Yeah.
in terms of like how much data management you're
Was
doing.
that challenging
That's
to get the big EDC vendors to cooperate or the sponsors to?
So I think it's a mix of it, right? We don't necessarily need any cooperation. It's sort of like giving us access. The way we do it is we have a team member from our side who's on the DOA of the site, and
Ah,
we manage access, and we have tooling which will enable us to be very efficient in moving data. So sort of think of it as
I
an AI
see.
enabled coordinator who we are
So it's like a layer
essentially
on
run, right?
top of it's not you don't need to back end into the actual vendor. You
No,
just I see. I see.
yeah. So that enables maximum flexibility. It also enables higher quality because there's always a human in the loop. I think most AI workflow needs a human in the loop. I think it's sort of very important to design it the right way. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we come in, right? So same thing with finance, right? I've read statistics somewhere that 90 something plus percent of the sites leak revenue, as in they've done the work, but they're not billing for it, or they don't know that they have not billed for it, or they have not been paid for it. And it's a lot of work, right? There's a lot of minutia, there's a lot of
I'm
customization in
doing it
the
now. I have
budgets.
to do that
Yeah,
today.
yeah. I mean, I deal with it too, right? And then on our side. So we have, as you can see, I have sort of seen and stack rank the most difficult parts of our business. And I would say the area where I really want to spend time is patient engagement and recruitment from a coordinator and the site staff perspective. The others is really like an overhead function, which I think more or less could be an AI driven function. And so that's what we focus on. What we say is, hey, here's a couple of personas who can manage these set of functions. You can work with Tilda, and we'll enable you to remove some of these overheads so that your time and your focus is on patient recruitment and patient engagement. Uh, and that ends up being I mean, just from our data, that ends up being a pretty nice balance from a coordinator staff as well as the site staff, because you're just offering a much better work-life balance and also
Interesting.
like value and work balance, right? So you sort of like shift this
So you have
theaters.
data entry, which makes the most sense. You have startup regulatory. I'm assuming regulatory maintenance. I'm
Yes,
assuming
yeah.
IRB, continuing review, startup review, all that stuff that everyone
Yeah,
hates.
your ICFs. I'll just give you an example, right?
Yeah.
Compliance wise, you have 20 studies or 10 studies, whatever number of studies you're working on, and a new ICF was generated, a new version of it, uh, and the IRB sends you an email. I'm sure you're excited and right on it, like on day one, on the top of the
No, the
hour. Probably
fear is
not.
that nobody knows, and then we have a deviation because nobody
Exactly.
re-signed the new form.
Yeah, I mean, the sponsor's view is when Dan gets this notification, he's on it in two
Oh
minutes,
yeah,
right?
I've been waiting for months for this thing. I can't wait. We're gonna have a
Exactly.
party. We're gonna have a party in the
Exactly.
office. Instead, what happens is nobody notices.
Nobody
You
notices.
hopefully
Yeah.
your coordinator notice. Again, balls down to the
Yeah.
coordinator. And you hope you have a site manager who's on top of it as well as another redundancy layer. If you're lucky, you
Yeah.
have a quality assurance that catches it. If all three miss it, because you guys are busy as hell, I mean, you're left to the gods at that point.
I mean, you're left on a protocol deviation, right? At some point, and then you
Yeah,
have to do a
yeah.
reconsent, bring the patient back.
A
There's a whole
major
like
one. A
workflow
major
around,
one.
yeah, the whole thing, right? So, wouldn't it be nice if you had an AI teammate who's basically checking, logging into different IRB systems for different, so different,
Yes.
it's checking on what's happening. It's like, okay, a new
So
ICF was
essentially,
put
it's
in.
like a quality assurance in a way, like quality, whatever you sites call it different things, but QA,
Yeah.
QC, making
Yeah,
sure
I
we're
mean,
doing things.
from our perspective, it's all around managing your regulatory cover, right? Your compliance and regulatory. So we do that, and then finance is another one. So we have several functions of finance automated through the teammates. So starting to build into this, and then I know we're only talking about sites, but we have an equivalent sort of teammates on the sponsor side as well. So for data management, quality,
Whoa,
regulatory on
whoa.
their
So
end.
you got
So
data management for the sponsors. Like, this is huge because this is sites don't really realize, but if biotech sponsor have to deal with data management. They have data locks, database locks, all that stuff. So this takes that grunt work kind of out of their hands as well.
yeah, again, the way I think about AI is it's like an augmentation layer, right? What we're bringing to the value is the person who's doing the data management has better tooling today to manage what's happening, better alerting, better recall. So yeah, I mean, there's I think one of the underappreciated things from a site perspective, just like sponsors don't appreciate all the things at the site level. I think from a site's perspective, looking outside into the sponsor side, there's tremendous challenges there. You're dealing with many, many sites all across the world, perhaps
Absolutely.
different SOPs, different ways of like handling your data, your documentation. There's variability on all of it. Site startups. So I think what we've done is built a similar set of AI teammates for doing some of these functions, which sponsors have to go through. And so, yeah, right now we have sponsors who use us for doing site startup, for example. You have a large study, you have to bring up 500 sites. How are you going to do that, right? It's going to take some time and effort. Whereas
Interesting.
you could have an AI teammate who can help you outreach. You can do document QC, filing into your TMFs. So there's a whole set of workflows which are sort of on the sponsor side as well, where you can start bringing in some of these AI teammates. So our approach has been just kind of working on these kind of high value areas and training our models to be very good at it and
Yeah.
reaching a certain level of accuracy in terms of how we deliver this. And that's in a nutshell what we do. We're an AI company, but very much
Yeah.
focused on bringing value to the clinical research space.
No, to me it's a no-brainer, but here's my not concerns, but my hesitations. Okay, and then I bring it up not to be combative, but it's a reflection of what others think too. So number one, like the e-source integration, like I don't want, switching costs. Like it doesn't matter the money. It matters my staff needs to be compliant. I understand with the AI, that's gonna be easy, but it's easier said than done, I think. So that's the first thing. But your proposition about starting slowly with different use cases appeals to me too. So like the startup reg, I think we could do that with congruent with our
Yeah.
eSource and same thing with the invoicing and the QA part. I like all that. The costs, I think there's a double-edged sword. Okay, if we wait as a site owner, if I jump to use this now, there's a couple of things like sponsors maybe are a little bit hesitant to give me the study. That's one. I think it's minor, that one. The second one is the the cost, right? If it's and I never got into pricing with at SOS, but I think when you're early, you have advantage against your competitors, but you also pay more, right? Like early adopters generally pay more. Tech is a deflationary force ultimately. Things get cheaper. So the default decision by a lot of site owners is I'm going to sit on the sidelines, watch my colleagues pay a little bit more. As soon as I hear that they're happy with it, maybe I'll jump in. Hopefully, it's a little cheaper by then. What's
Mhm.
your analysis
Yeah,
on that?
I think it's quite simple. We've committed to not building a business based off sites. So you'd be surprised basically on how we price our services and our product. It'd probably be in all effect probably less than what you're spending on your entire tech stack, given the value we're adding right now. So I mean, it's a unique perspective, right? This is something where I go back to why I'm doing this, right? My passion here is to make a difference in how many, uh, shots on goal we have as a community on new medicine. And if the sites are the place where we need to make an effort to help optimize, then they cannot be your, sort of like you just described. They cannot be the reason and why your business in fact exists, right? I look at it as how can I do everything possible? If I could do it for free for a site perspective with this kind of an AI power, I would do it. Trust me, like that's exactly where I'd be and not hesitate at all. But yeah, like our strategy has been uh, you know, deliver tremendous amount of value where it's like a no-brainer. Like, you look at it and you're like, this is something where I don't understand why I'm not doing it. Why am I paying for anything else out there? Especially when this is kind of how these guys do it, right? And the advantage we have is, you know, obviously being well funded is interesting, right? From an organization perspective, I think the motivations are very, very, very much aligned with where I'd like to be in this place. And like you said, we've gotten a really great start. We started just, I mean, basically launched towards the late last year, like right after Thanksgiving. We have tens of sites right now on the platform. The pipeline is growing. Um, you know, so it's a good start. I think we're going to
Wow.
continue to go this path. And I think ultimately what I tell people is we're not selling you software. We think software should really not be the conversation out here. What we're selling you is an AI teammate who is sort of like your teammate who can help your entire team do much, much better, right?
A
And
persona. You said it earlier, persona.
yeah, exactly. And I think the notion that I'm buying a software will change and will probably go away, in my opinion, many years to come. Because what is software really? Yes, you can bring in software, but ultimately you have to do the work of using the software. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's not doing anything which you would rather not do. And I think there's a huge opportunity in sort of saying, you know, we're not selling you software. We're just going to sell you an outcome. We're going to take care of this entire work, just like a consultant would do, or whatever it might be. And that's what is really like valuable for you. So in
So
the net effect, don't pay for software, right? Pay for like an actual outcome.
yeah.
So
No, no. At SOS, when I talked to Gurov, right, and then I had to go on stage to do a panel, and I talked to my friend Andrew Mitchell, who was right there, and I mentioned this interview I just did because it was fresh in my head. And I said, there's this company, they're going to have AI to help your coordinators. One of the ancillary benefits as a site owner is like one of the fears we have is that our staff gets demotivated from not just grunt work and being overworked. Like, yeah, let's bring an admin, let's bring more help. I don't have a problem doing that. It's them getting complacent or us getting too dependent on like the coordinator. And if the coordinator says, you know what, I have a slight change in attitude, I no longer gonna work as hard on data entry. If you bring something like this in there, the staff sees, and it's not to scare them, but they're like, well, look, they're got this thing going on its own. I have to step my game up in other areas because I have, it's not like they're re trying to replace me, but I can see they're getting their efficiency from this new tool. It just
Mhm.
makes it such a new conversation. There's multiple layers to this that I
Yeah.
think we haven't really discussed because we don't have enough time.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting learnings in my experience as well, working with our current client base. What I'll tell you is, by and large, the the phenotype I've noticed is people are just overworked right now. There's just a
Yeah,
lot
for
going
sure.
on.
For
They
sure.
have a million things happening in it already, right? When we show up, I mean, obviously there's change management. There's nothing can, without change, nothing can happen, right? No value can be derived. Within a few weeks, what we notice generally is people are really happy that this is happening because they actually, for the first time, feel like, you know what, I have some breathing space to do things which I wanted to do or catch up on. And it's not because we came in and sort of did some work for them, that sort of thing. It's more because we're adding value in a way where they can use it, they're oversighting it, they're in control. So it's ultimately it's an AI. It's not going to just do it all itself. You have to oversight it. So your skill set now starts to become something of a, I am a person who knows how to use AI to do my job. And that's a valuable skill into the next coming many years because what is the skill? Just like when a computer came out, are you going to resist a computer or a calculator? You probably are going to get better and better at it. And people who have gotten figured that out are going to be the next set of leaders in that space and people who can add value, right? So I think we're probably in that first innings right now with Tilda, where we're seeing this happen. We have many coordinators I speak to on a regular basis, many admins, directors of research programs. And I think we're actually doing quite a few interviewing as well ourselves and sort of starting to post that on our LinkedIn. You'll see that they're happy. There's like, this is great. Like this actually allows me to do things I don't want to do. I've been doing this grant work, which I really do not want to do. This is not what I get satisfaction from my job in.
Right.
And now I can spend time on other areas. And it's not that I'm getting replaced. I'm still part of it because I have to do the ultimate, observability and supervision of the AI. So your
Yeah,
skill set is slightly now moving towards, I can now claim that I have capabilities to manage my work with AI, which is a
exactly.
hugely big function from a career perspective, right? So things are going to change.
Yes.
I don't think this is how it will be for too long, but
Hmm.
it's yeah,
That
we're
opens up
we're in a
another layer because as a site owner, again, this could be a 5 hour interview, but if you have to go, let me know. But I don't plan
10 minutes,
5 hours,
yeah,
don't worry. The
yeah.
as a site owner, one of the things that concerns me when I find an A player, I don't want to lose them, right? And most of the time, I'm bringing them to a new industry, but I recognize something of value and like, hey, I could actually build a site. This person can maybe one day manage like a whole department for me. I find myself apologizing a lot in the early days, especially when it's data entry or something mundane, like because this job is so cool, a coordinator, on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's so freaking boring and mundane, and like that's the part where I'm apologizing for. Like, I know you hate this. Yes, when the IRB sends the new ICF, you have to. I know you like. I hate. I apologize for the role, but I'm like, I've even said it before. It just sucks. This is one of the part of the jobs that sucks, but you got to do it. But with your thing, there's like an escape plan from this that I see. And I think that's a good way to sell it to staff that are hesitant. Like, I know you love a lot of aspects of your job and you hate a lot of aspects, and I think this tilde thing can kind of take away most, if not all, of the part that sucks. The way I see it as an
I
outsider, I think
yeah,
that's
no, I mean, see, listen, if I were to put myself in the shoes of a coordinator, which I have been, and
yeah.
from my own perspective, I would not resist it. I'm not trying to say, you don't need to do your job. I think what I'm saying is, Ram, you have an opportunity to learn how to use AI for the very first time to be something unique in your industry.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a skill which will be valuable into the coming years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a personal development. It's an opportunity to do better right away. There's like value right now which you can gain. And so I think on many fronts, I mean, we don't necessarily go down this path and talk to the client, the customers we work with right now. We're not necessarily selling it this way, but I think there's many opportunities which if I were a CRC, or if I were in the just getting started into the space, or even somebody who's mid-career and looking for the next 10, 15 years of opportunity in the space. I mean, you have to think about what skills are you acquiring, right? Where are you going with this? And I mean, I'm an avid user of ChatGPT and Claude and like various all these tools, right, for doing my work. And I would say I'm net more productive than I have been 2 years ago before these tools showed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think many people probably have a similar opportunity who are power users of this kind of technology today.
Interesting.
And it's going to be the same. I think we just don't have a great set of tools right now for the sites and the research space. But they're starting to come out, and
They're
companies like
starting.
ourselves are doing more. And we'll see more of it. But it's an exciting time. I think there's just a lot of opportunity to introduce AI and this sort of like upskilling, both from the coordinator perspective, but also at the management of the site. And I think, fast forward from here, what's the net effect, right? I think you have a much well-functioning site. Like I said, if I do think there's more sites required than there are today, and so this also
Hmm.
tremendously reduces that barrier to start and build a network of sites. So for example, we have customers who are on 2 sites right now, and their plan is to get to 10, 15, and they're funded and they're going after it, for example, right? So what type of stack are you going to build on, like, and how can you make this an advantage to your overall like operating model? So that's one client who's basically like on a scale side. And then we have others who are community sites who are, like you said, they have 2 or 3 talented staff members. They're on the verge of burnout, and you're worried that they might leave, or they might they
Yeah,
might
like
just
hey,
burn
this
out. And
sucks.
yeah,
Some of it
and
sucks.
what can you do to help them? Maybe give them an AI teammate, right? Who can help them,
The
and they're happy
ceiling
that you're giving them. So
The
things like that.
ceiling to progress, I'm in that boat too. I'm trying to build a site network here. I have a good opportunity. There's some PE potentially. The ceiling to growth is complexity, and the complexity is scale. How do you get past it? Last question, I promise. Okay. Is this a winner take most thing? Like what you're doing? I mean, if it shows any kind of success, there's going to be other players coming in, and that drives pricing down. I assume the hard part is getting the sponsors to be okay with it. So this is why I feel it might be a winner take most situation. What do you think about this?
Um, just to clarify, are we talking about winner take all from a site perspective, or
No, no, no. From
okay.
your what Tilda does
Oh, I
the
see. I actually don't think so, Dan. I think this is not one of those industries where, in general, you can rely on winner take all. The reason I think so is there are certain characteristics of businesses where, like a social network, where there's a high amount of engagement, there's a high amount of like network effect, where you can kind of claim there's only one LinkedIn or one Facebook, right? So that's the winner take all market. I think these sort of technologies ultimately will rely on how much value you provide and continuing to be the best at providing that value, right? So it's like saying a CRO will be a winner take all market. It's never going to be. You have many reasons why there's many, many CROs. They all offer a slightly differentiated product, which is the right fit
yeah.
for you as a client.
Well, the
So when I think about AI teammates, that's kind of how I think about it. In a world where many people are
yeah.
coming and building AI teammates, competing with us and whatnot, um, yeah, we will all have certain characteristics which maybe you'll start to like for for what
No,
your culture and fit is, and
I'm
yeah.
very curious. The reason I was saying winner take most, I was thinking more of metadata and EDC. Like they
Mhm.
probably have even today probably 80% of the market share, and then there's
Yeah.
Viva
Yeah,
EDC and all
and
that.
we're like, think about it like this, right? When we work with our sponsors, we're not an EDC. We're not trying to replace Medidata or Viva. We simply work on top of them. So we are providing an AI teammate who can basically function in certain roles, just like you would bring in a person,
I
but do
see.
some of this work and augment it,
I
right?
see.
So
So
yeah, I
unlike a
think
metadata, it's not like a need, but it's a optimization efficiency, but it's not like a man like you can do a study without tilde, but why would you?
yeah, I
I
mean, you can do
understand
it
the
without
argument.
tilde and just
Yeah.
putting, just basically staffing it the way you
Yeah.
are doing it
Yeah.
today, which
Okay.
has its own concerns and
Fair enough.
inefficiencies and such.
Fair
Or you
enough.
could use something like this, which sits on top of it, right? So,
Fair enough. Maybe 20 years from now it becomes ubiquitous, then it's winner take most. But early
yeah,
days.
it's what
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Man, you've been a good sport, Ram, answering a bunch of questions, sharing your story. I'm personally I've been interested since SOS. It hasn't left my mind. Like I said, I gave you a couple of my hesitations, and I think other site owners do as well, but it's definitely worth looking into, especially as we look to scale past this complexity ceiling we inevitably hit at our sites if you want to get to the next phase. So if anyone's interested, just Ram's LinkedIn is underneath, and I'm sure he'll talk to you directly, but ultimately send you to someone. Or you go directly with people still? What
Yeah, it's
you
Ram at tilde.bio. I'll be
wow.
the direct channel.
You know how many people are
Yeah.
gonna ask you for jobs, man? That's all right.
No,
All
we're
right.
hiring. Welcome to reach out.
Ah,
Yeah, absolutely. No,
I'm
I'd love
curious.
to. I'm very excited to meet people in our industry. And like I said, it's a very unique industry, a lot of difficulties and opportunity. But I think we're also a small community. That's one thing which I realize.
Yeah.
It's not a very large group. So yeah, happy to help in whatever way I can.
Thank you, Ram. Ram's LinkedIn's underneath. You heard his email. I'm definitely going to be interested in learning more about this and as we scale. But thank you, Ram. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Dan. Have a good one.
Everybody go connect. Bye bye.